Here we go. Oops, clicked the button too many times. All right, now we've settled in. I've got my guests in the waiting room, so you've got a sneak preview of a couple of the guests who will come in a bit later on. But, John, what's the big news today?
Glenn, I think it's not so much that I'm the guest, but rather the news that I bring. People would have woken up this morning, wiping the sleep out of their eyes, seen the media and seen that Anthony Albanese has announced a $2.3 billion solar battery subsidy scheme that will...
Did I get that right? Billion?
Billion, Bs, yeah, $2.3 billion. So in their assessment, it will bring on an additional 1.1 million batteries between now and 2030. Although, Glenn, our collective job is to make sure that that's wrong, that we do much bigger than that. Because the good news is this is an uncapped scheme. So while that's a budget estimation, it has been allowed for in the current budget, it does not mean that that's the capped amount. So if we do better than that, there's even more money for our industry.
Wow, that is absolutely huge. Now, I was also privy to that webinar this morning. How many people were listening in on that?
We had at peak over 560 participants in that this morning. And the reason I'm a little bit jerky here is because I'm actually at Federal Parliament House. I'm on the run. I've just come out of a press conference with all of the major media outlets and hopefully step into another meeting very shortly as well.
Right. So if we see you suddenly disappear, it's one of the advisors grabbed you and pulled you away.
There you go. And the right advice at the right time can pay huge dividends for the whole industry.
So you've been somewhat intimately involved with this development of this program?
Yeah, the good news is that the government has been good listeners. We've reflected to them what I've heard every day in our industry, and that is that the missing piece of policy is to make home and business batteries cheaper. And they've adopted that, and that's what they're doing. So we're extremely pleased. It also means that we've had an opportunity to actually work through in detail our recommendations, minimum size, value amount, and how it should be rolled out. And let's go into some of that detail next, Glenn. But it does mean that not only do we have the ability to influence the development until now, but more, it is to influence the development from here. So after the election, we would expect that we would be in deep technical discussions with the clean energy regulator and other authorities to actually make sure that the details are right, so that when it rolls out, it's absolutely right. And so this is an opportunity for people to provide feedback. We will be coordinating that. And Glenn, you've got an important role to play here. As I said this morning, you're on my speed dial, a really important advisor to me as I try and get the policy right. So that's going to be important. Should we give people a bit of an insight into what the parameters are? So this is a rebate. It will be delivered through the SRES. So this will be in the form of STCs, although whether they're called battery technology certificates or something, I'm not entirely sure. But it's the existing process that everybody knows and is already in place. That's important because it means there's not another process to set up. There are not state governments involved. There's not, a whole new validation process that's going to be involved. It does mean that products that'll be supported will be on the approved product list. It does mean that anybody who installs a battery under this will need to be accredited with Solar Accreditation Australia. We think that they are important controls, and they're important from safety and from consumer confidence. The scheme is going to provide essentially an STC value that in the first year or until the end of this year will have a value of around $370 per kilowatt hour. Now, the way this actually rolls out, we're not talking to the end customers about that amount because it kind of depends on what their rec agent, what their retailer and other things provide. So I don't want to socialise that's a fixed figure. It is a fixed figure in terms of what the rebate amount will be, but how that flows through, there's a little bit of calculation to be done.
Okay, so it's actually based on an STC value per kilowatt hour.
It is, that's correct, of $370 per kilowatt hours. So what that means is that if you've got a 11.5 kilowatt hour battery, it would be 370 times 11.5. Now, we had clarification this morning that this is on the usable battery component rather than the headline rated amount. So people who do STCs, the scheme will come into place on the 1st of July, but very importantly, the government is agnostic about when batteries are sold and when they are installed. So you can sell a battery today, you can install a battery today, but as long as you connect it, do the final connection on or after the 1st of July, that would trigger the rebate amount. Now, while that still is going to be challenging for some businesses from a cash flow perspective, and I would really encourage everyone to be thinking today and tomorrow about how you're going to deal with this in terms of your own contract structures and the way that you're financing and the way that you do business. But it has really tried to reduce the impact as much as possible. The thing that we've said over and over to the minister is, don't create the valley of death. You've got to do everything you can to mitigate that. And it means also that batteries that you were planning to install next week can absolutely go ahead and just give the customer the advice, well, actually, there's potentially an extra $4,000 rebate here if you just hold off until the 1st of July. That sounds like a pretty big incentive for the consumer to be happy to do that.
You mentioned that $4,000 figure. Where did that come from?
Well, $4,000 is if you take 11.5 kilowatt hours, times it by 370. But the important thing is this is for batteries between 5 kilowatts as a minimum size, kilowatt hours, and 50 kilowatt hours as the maximum size. Now, you can install a battery up to 100 kilowatt hours, and you'll get the rebate amount on the first 50 kilowatt hours. So I think the messaging, Glenn, for industry, for consumers will be, get the biggest battery you can afford, but even a small battery is better than no battery at all.
Oh, up to 50 kilowatt hours. Now, what about people off-grid? Are they still eligible?
So yes, this is a program that has been made available for people on-grid and off-grid. They are going to take some advice on how this will work on microgrids, but the answer is it's going to be available for all Australians. The other thing that they're doing for on-grid people is they're saying that the battery system that is installed must be VPP capable. They're not saying that it needs to be VPP connected, but I think there is a big value upsell that people have to really say, not only is this VPP enabled, but you should connect it because there's another saving that you're going to get that's going to further reduce your payback period on an already subsidised solar battery.
Maybe for those who are not familiar with what a VPP is, can you give a thumbnail sketch?
Virtual power plant. Why would I try and do a technical explanation in the presence of the technical expert?
All right. Here's a simple little explainer. So if you've got lots of small battery systems, they're fine for the end user, but they're not great for the grid, and they don't actually offer a whole lot of direct benefit, a little bit of solar absorbing. But once you aggregate all those little batteries together, they become a big battery. And so a virtual power plant is a power plant that's virtually distributed across potentially the whole of Australia, and to some extent can be controlled like a big power plant. So when you consider how much solar we've got installed, well, if we have a similar capacity in batteries, we've got a massive battery.
And as I said to the press just then, if you've got one solar battery, it doesn't make much of a difference. But if you've got 1.523 million solar batteries, then that is a game changer. It's a game changer for demand and for wholesale electricity pricing, and that will actually deliver a dividend to every electricity consumer, not just the people who have the solar batteries.
So what other criteria, apart from being between 5 and 50 kilowatt hours and connected to, VPP capable?
So, in terms of income, so what is the income threshold that this is allowed for? The answer is there is no threshold. So this is available for all Australians. That's really great. It means determining who your customer is going to be really simple. There's an opportunity for companies to get on the front foot, to go back to their database and look at all of the people that they've provided a solar PV quote for over the last 6-7 years, or a solar battery, whether they bought from you or not, to go back and say, actually, here are the details of a new program, and if this goes ahead after the federal election, then we're standing by to be your partner to actually deliver this, and we are program experts. And so a lot of companies are going to be getting on the front foot around that messaging over the next 48 hours or so.
So what about if you've already got a battery?
Well, again, so the limitation, if you have an existing solar battery, is there is no limitation. So you get to install another solar battery with the rebate amount. There is one limitation people need to be aware of, and that is that you get one battery per household. So if you've got an existing battery, that doesn't count. It didn't get the rebate. You can put in one that does get the rebate. That does count, but it then means you can't do another one. It also means that you can't upgrade the size of it down the track. And that's why the messaging around kind of get the biggest battery you can afford is going to be useful to people, because to kind of future-proof where they go from there.
Now, considering that it's going to fall under the SRAS and create STCs, does that mean it's also going to fade out to 2030 like the SRAS?
So yes, this is a policy that is designed to provide an incentive between today and 2030. So it's on the same time frame of the SRAS. I think the reason they've done this is they've tried to figure out what's the easiest way to get this legislated. And the way they'll do it is to make an amendment to regulations, which is a very simple act that the minister can do. It doesn't need to go as an act through Parliament. So it means the prospect of this being held up in Parliament is much lower. But it does mean that, the rebate amount will be will be brought down every year, just as it is with solar PV, where every 12 months the rebate amount steps down, but it's a known curve. And the same would apply to solar batteries. We hope that the demand from this program will pull in so many more solar batteries and bring down the cost of solar batteries. Remember, Glenn, that a kilowatt hour of lithium-ion battery cells in 2020, ex-factory, US dollars, costs $250 per kilowatt hour. Today, that same kilowatt hour costs $91. So 2020, 250, today, 91. We expect that to continue to fall, just as it's done with solar PV. So we hope that just with solar PV, where that adjustment is made annually, but it basically has no effect on the industry, apart from an artificial rush in at the end of the year to try and get the subsidy amount, but then the price then flows through. We'd expect the same thing to happen with the battery subsidy scheme.
Now, the scheme was scheduled to start on the 1st of July. What happens until then?
So really, there's one big uncertainty that we can't mitigate, and that is we don't know who the Prime Minister is going to be. We don't know who the ruling party is going to be. We've strongly welcomed this announcement from Anthony Albanese. And a few seconds ago, publicly, I called on Peter Dutton. I channeled my inner Scott Morrison, and I said, where the bloody hell are you? We want to see a coalition government match this commitment because the whole industry and all consumers are standing on tenterhooks until we've got some certainty. But let's say that the election does proceed. The polls at the moment have Labor 52%, Coalition 48%. So the most likely outcome is a Labor government, maybe a minority Labor government. That makes no difference to this policy. The good news is that the government started the work in government. So they started before the election period. The CER have been doing detailed work. It's been in the budget. It was in the budget that was just announced, so it's been fully provisioned for. There's no additional funding that's required for this. So it means that actually the chance of a 1 July date is very real because the department will keep working on it until they know that there's a different government or a different policy in place.
So this is where the allocated but unannounced parts of the budget were.
$2.3 billion for solar batteries, mate.
It's got to be the biggest announcement for the election.
Look, it's one of them, and I think it's the most consequential. We can talk about $30 billion for the capacity investment scheme or Future Made in Australia. It kind of doesn't mean anything to anyone. But I tell you what, slashing their power bill by another $1,200 a year because they've got a solar battery, that means something.
Right. Okay. So it's going to run through to 2030 and it will reduce progressively. But as you just highlighted, the cost of batteries will be reducing at the same rate. So that means it's actually a really strong incentive program right through to 2030.
Correct.
In terms of the 1st of July date, now they said something about that's when you have to turn it on. So you can't turn it on before the 1st of July, even if you have it installed prior.
That's right. So you can install it, you can sell it, but don't do the final connection until the 1st of July. That way you'll do the final connection, you'll take the selfie or whatever the CER is going to require, and you will then be in compliance for the scheme. So if look, it is a bit of a pest because it might require another trip back. But if it means that the customer gets, 3 or 4, 5 or more, up to $18,000 rebate if they get a 50 kilowatt hour battery, then it's absolutely worth it. Like not having the production for 90 days, 60 days or something is kind of a rounding error.
Right. Cool. Now we've got standing by. Let's just see if they're still there. They're still there. I think Bradley is. So Bradley has been in the battery industry for a long time. Can I just bring him on? And he's got a few questions for you.
Great.
So I'll just introduce Bradley. Now, Bradley, no, I'm just hearing that there's a bit of an echo at your end, but I can fix that in the post. There is just a little bit of a problem, but it's to do with echo cancellation. We had to turn it on before we started recording. But don't worry, this is all being recorded separately, and I'll be releasing a edited version very soon without the echo. So sorry for those who are watching it live, but it won't be in the edited version. So just introduce Bradley. Bradley's been involved with Quality Power Solutions as a provider with initially Power Plus Solutions since 1996, and he's founder of Power Plus Energy Australia, the battery manufacturer, in 2017. So Bradley, I hope you're still there. Just bring you on.
Alive and well.
Good. So Bradley, you might have a few questions for John.
Well, sorry, I was sort of expecting questions myself, but it's sort of an exciting time in the sense of this is part of the picture for the future of having a clean, reliable energy system in Australia, and it sort of, it'd be interesting to see what the government's going to do as far as the other components, for the microgrids, for centralised big battery systems. I'm a big proponent of distributed networks, because then you're not relying on the poles and wires to support individual businesses, individual homes or communities, but the poles and wires sort of connect all of the solar systems together, all the battery systems together, so that we have a clean, reliable energy source. What more could you add to the government's plan for? I mean, looking at the NEM overnight, there's about between 30 to 33 gigawatt hours of power's being consumed. I think from memory about 4 gigawatt hours was coming from wind, but there's still a big reliance, especially in Victoria, on brown coal, and in Queensland and New South Wales on black coal. What's your understanding of what the big picture is as far as being able to reduce that over the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Well, first, Bradley, the good news is that the government were quite definitive today in saying that this was available for grid-connected, off-grid and microgrid systems. So I think there's going to be a solution for all of those. So that's really good news, because as you say, the future in many places is actually taking communities off-grid. That's absolutely right. In terms of the impact on the system, I think it's going to be quite profound. Rooftop solar has snuck up on the energy system, but rooftop solar actually plays a disproportionately large role once you've got 4 million of them around the country. In South Australia, we see times of the year when more than 100% of the total state's energy needs are met by rooftop solar alone. So forget about gas and coal, forget about big wind, forget about big solar, just rooftop solar alone. So what my team is doing today is we did some initial modelling on what an additional 700,000 batteries would look like in the market. And we looked at primarily from the perspective of wholesale electricity prices, particularly during those periods of peak demand in the evening. And we found that the saving was about $1.3 billion a year. We need to extend that because the ambition of what's been announced is greater than what we had anticipated for it to be. And so we need to update those numbers. And a shout out to those who have economic modelling expertise who can help us particularly also quantify some of the figures around the network costs and the other avoided costs of actually taking a massive load off at that time of the day would also be really useful to model in before we release them publicly to the press and elsewhere. But you're quite right, very significant, and I think will be increasingly significant in the future.
Is there,
Bradley? Go ahead.
Yes, sorry, go on.
I was just going to ask you a question, and that is, as a fantastic Australian manufacturer, do you see an opportunity for this policy for you and for your business?
Until we see the details, that's going to be a little bit difficult. However, like a big focus of our business has been off-grid, and so I'm very encouraged by the fact that this policy is going to also support off-grid and the reduction of reliance on diesel. The devil will be in the detail as far as how how it plays out. I guess I was a little bit not so much surprised, but hopeful that the government would talk a little bit more about Australian content. So you've got manufacturers like ARL, you've got Tindo Solar, you've got other companies that are trying to invest in manufacturing in Australia. However, for a variety of reasons, imported product, and generally it's a high quality imported product, is can be sold more at lower prices in Australia, and there's not a lot of incentive there at the moment. On one hand, it's good that Australian manufacturing has to compete with the realities of what it costs to produce elsewhere, but at the same time, there's no real incentive at the moment, it appears, to support Australian manufacturing.
Look, I'm totally with you. One thing we've failed in this country to do is to exploit the commercial upside of all of the great innovations that we make. We kind of invent this stuff and then it gets kind of made overseas, and that's got to end. So our message to government from the outset has been prioritise Australian content. That remains our message, and we will still have an opportunity to provide influence on that message before this actually comes into place. So you can take that as read, that's absolutely going to be on it's always been on our list, but it will continue to be on our list. And the other thing is, we were successful in advocating for the federal government to put in $1 billion program for solar panel manufacturing and $500 million for Australian battery manufacturing through the last term of government. And there might be a way that we can tweak that policy so that we actually unlock some of the value of that for existing players like yourself who are actually supporting a policy like this.
Part of my vision or concern is that I think these programs can be very good for stimulating the industry in Australia. For example, your comment about the amount of domestic solar, I hadn't really looked at it before, but I was really surprised, like you commented, domestic solar way outstrips commercial solar. It's amazing how much of the grid is supported by domestic solar. But in 5 years' time, when the battery rebate scales back, will the industry be able to stand on its own legs, from that time forward to continue supporting, the rollout, the industry, the installers, the manufacturers? That's my only concern, is not understanding what's going to happen in 5 years as the rebates disappear.
Look, I think that there are two things to say. First is that in politics, nothing is inevitable. And so I think the fight for our industry is going to be an ongoing thing,
Yep.
But secondly, that the economics do make sense. The reason that solar is doing so well globally, it took 68 years for the world to deploy the first terawatt of solar. It took 2 years for the world to deploy the second terawatt of solar. And the reason that's happening is down to economics. Engineering and economics. And the good news is that as we get into the sweet spot, so I also see this as a transitionary measure, as something that kind of gets us there a bit earlier and creates the demand and actually pulls through more supply and pushes the cost down, so that this is just the economic no-brainer. This is the smart thing to do, and this drives our whole energy system going forward.
There's also the sense of self-reliance. Like I've been doing solar for 20 years or more, and I only had solar installed on my own property about 3 years ago, so I'm sort of grid independent. And when I turn the light switch on, there's that little sense of excitement that, that's my solar light. Or when I use the vacuum cleaner or the air conditioner, that's my solar air conditioner, and knowing that we're sort of doing our little bit, but there's still that sense of excitement.
I reckon if you look at the newspaper today, right, the world is out of control. And if there's one thing this does, is it gives consumers a sense back of control, that they can have control over what their solar is going to be. They can have control over their solar battery. And they know that even if war breaks out in Iran tomorrow and oil prices go through the roof, or gas prices or whatever it is, that at least they've got some element of control. So I think it's a very important psychological point.
It's kind of interesting going up to Glenn's place and seeing all these solar hippies charging their electric vehicles off grid, and knowing that no matter what happens with any restrictions on petrol, etc., they can still drive their kids to school or drive to the shops because they've got their own solar and batteries. They're sort of energy independent.
Well, thank you, Bradley, for being a guest on the show today. I'm no doubt we'll have you back again some other time. But I've got Anne in the waiting room, so I might bring Anne in. Bradley, I'm just going to pop you back into the waiting room. Here you go. John, so you know Anne, but the audience might not fully know her. She's the lead electrician here at the Smart Energy Lab and also the technical operations manager at Solar Plus, our solar design software. So I'll just bring Anne on.
Hey, guys. Hey. Also one of those hippies that charges their electric car off-grid. Yeah.
Glenn, I love talking to Anne. She's a genuine expert and a great hand.
Well, I'll just hand over to Anne for a bit. Here we go.
Yeah, interesting day, hey? So this is fantastic. I have a couple of questions. And also, I've been preparing a talk for the Smart Energy Conference, which is in Sydney, as you know, this week, about how to do optimize your battery sizing, depending on whether you're looking for ROI or percentage of renewables or backup. And this kind of shifts the goalposts by dropping the price of batteries so much. The kind of sweet spots that we'd see in certain ratios have shifted. So I still haven't had time to run the numbers completely. I've actually just been making sure that Solar Plus as a design and quoting platform is all compatible and ready. And so we've done some checks and just put some stuff on the help center this morning, and we're all good to automatically calculate the rebate, and that's good.
That's going to be so valuable to people, and I think people will just be lining up to hear that, because if you can have some analysis that's quick off the mark that kind of shows this stuff, everyone's looking for leadership in this. So I think that's super valuable. I think that'll be great. Just to put a shameless plug in, the Smart Energy Conference is Wednesday and Thursday at the International Convention Centre in Sydney. We have over 130 exhibitors, 350 expert speakers, completely free of charge. And now we're going to be talking to the national media about this being Australia's solar battery showcase. So if you're in the industry and connected to solar batteries in any way, you've just got to be there. Get on a plane, and come up. You really have to be part of it. So as I say, it's free of charge. So it's just a service. You can get up to 130 CPD points completely free of charge at the event as well. But I think this has shifted the whole event, to be frank, not just individual talks.
Yeah, it'll be a real buzz. Actually, I did have a question for you too. I was also compiling a list of VPP eligible products just to give people a bit of a guide, and wanted to double check with you. Does it include inverters that are controllable by third-party equipment like switched in?
Yeah, so I'm taking the view that CSIP enabled inverters totally on the list. We will have an opportunity to confirm that, but that would be our strong recommendation.
Nice one. That would definitely make it easy. I'm sure everyone who's otherwise not is screaming at the moment or stressing out a little bit. But as we say, this is still just an election promise, and hopefully it'll come through. And yeah,
that's right. Yeah, it is. But the good news is that it's something that the government's been working on for 18 months. They've been very good listeners. They continue to engage. And so I think as we get these, there's going to be little ripples, lots of detail, because it's a very complex field. The opportunity for us to get it right is absolutely there. And we'll keep talking to government to make sure it is right when it comes out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's always a bit of the industry is called a solar coaster for a reason, and there's always these ups and downs, I guess, a little bit. But from what I've seen so far, it's been one of the better managed rebates schemes or subsidy schemes come out so far. The proof will be in the pudding of the actual rollout, but so far, heaps better than anything else so far. So, yeah, real credit to everyone who's worked on it.
Yeah, no, thank you. Particularly, we're seeing those schemes in New South Wales and Western Australia at the moment, diabolical, have absolutely really decimated industry, and that can't happen. So I think that controlling whatever they can to really help is important. The certainty of a known and existing scheme, just really essential to that. No additional processes, no additional registrations or anything else. It's just basically an extension of what currently happens. STCs, they're paid quickly. All of that is well known and understood, and does give some certainty as to how this will progress.
Yeah. And any idea if there's going to be extra kind of compliance things like having to submit an arc flash calculation or things like that?
I am anticipating that there is going to be some additional requirements because, of course, batteries are not called up under the SRES at the moment. So STCs, don't rely. So I expect there will be, just as there are selfies, for example, for installers, I'd expect the same. The other thing that they have said is that, battery installers will need to be accredited through Solar Accreditation Australia. That remains a voluntary accreditation, but it's the sort of thing that people might want to think about in advance, so that they're well positioned to take it up when the time comes.
Yeah, cool. Bit of a no-brainer.
Cool. Well, look, I know John's probably pressed for time here. He's at Parliament House and he's surrounded by advisors and people who want to pick his brain and media. So I think we probably have to let him to slide away. So thank you so much, John, for taking the time to join us here on the Toolbox Tech Talk, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Glad, thank you. And just once again, just to put on the record, our deep appreciation for everything that you do and your team. You're an asset to the whole industry, and I'm grateful to have you, and I think everyone else is too. So thanks, mate.
And just remember, don't close your tab until it's finished uploading the high-res version.
Got it.
Got it.
I'll do it.
Okay. See you, John.
Thank you.
So we've got the full suite here. Look, I guess I'm full of apologies because this is the first time I've actually for a long time used this streaming software. I can have guests come in. So there's been a few little hiccups, people popping in and out when they shouldn't have. And also this little echo problem, which the chat is telling me about. So I even had my partner creep in behind me with a note saying there's an echo, and she's waving this note off to the side of me. So yeah, sorry, it's been a little bit chaotic. But the good news is all of this is being recorded at high resolution, high quality, and I will be re-editing it and uploading it back to the various channels. So if you really just had enough of the echo, it'll be gone on the final version. So maybe a question to Bradley. Are you excited?
It's going to create all sorts of opportunities. However, while John is sort of talking it up, until installers know the details, it's going to be difficult to know what effect it's going to have on us as a manufacturer and other businesses installing batteries, when people who are considering buying batteries now may be put in this position where they've got to say, well, I buy it now, or if I wait 2 months or 3 months, I might get, $4,000 to $18,000 off the cost. So knowing the details, that will make it easier for our business. It'll make it easier for installers to know how they navigate the next 3 months.
Right. So you feel there's going to be some short-term pain?
Yep. Well, someone told me about something going on overseas with tariffs, that, the theory is that the bit of short-term pain is a long-term gain. I won't say who my political commentator is.
Yeah, let's not hope it's so crazy as that. But yeah. And I guess, you're working away on Solar Plus, trying to create the formulas so that these economics can be calculated. Have you got enough information to do that accurately now?
Yeah, well, we've just The echo is driving me nuts, sorry. But we're just about to launch tomorrow, actually, a new report where we'll have battery utilisation ratio as part of the design report. Also, the battery capacity to daily consumption load ratio, and solar generation to battery capacity ratio, as well as solar self-consumption. So people are probably used to, when they're doing their designs, they know that, you know, for a certain tariff and their location, then if you get solar self-consumption to 60% or so, then you're going to have really nice ROI. But with battery sizing, it's not just about ROI. You're also looking for your paid powered by renewables percentage, so how much of your energy comes from solar and battery, and also the backup hours. So to get a good handle on those, need to just broaden the view of metrics that we take a look at. And at the moment, I'm also, we're just about to launch that report that will give designers an overview of those. But what's also very exciting is we're collaborating with RMIT at the moment on how to do some interesting mathematics to arrive at the sweet spots given different scenarios. So you're given a time of use tariff, or given an east-west array rather than a north array, or what have you, just to give designers a bit more guidance and make life quicker and easier for designing.
So, and you're going to be presenting at the Smart Energy Expo, or the conference at the Expo. Will you be covering some of this material?
Yep.
So, Anne, I was just wondering, with this rebate, depending on the batteries that are being used and the cost of actual installation, doesn't it make the battery almost free, like the early days of solar panel rebates?
The numbers that I've been running through have been based on mid-range equipment and probably installation costs at the higher end of the spectrum. So I can't answer that right now. I've been kind of scrambling this morning doing other stuff. I'd love to be able to answer it just right off the top of my tongue now, but I don't know. I'll have to run it.
Anne and I could have a great conversation if you disappeared, Glenn. Sorry, small attempt at humour.
Right. Well, actually, I'm just thinking we might just wrap it up now. So I think this is going to be the first of many Toolbox Tech Talks about this program, because there's going to be more detail being released. Certainly, the big number is the election, because it is tied to the outcome of the election. We haven't heard from the opposition whether they support or not support it, though John did say he channeled Scott Morrison and sort of put it to Dutton, but we haven't heard anything definitive yet. So it does depend on the outcome of the election to some extent. And after that, there'll be the regulation being made public. So they've got to write a regulation around this, and there'll be a fair bit of detail. So expect to hear more on the channel as we find out. So, yeah. So thanks, Anne, and thanks, Bradley, for taking up part of your Sunday and putting up with a horrible echo.
We got to look at your beautiful face and the gold chain for another week.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll send you to the green room one at a time. Bye, Bradley. And bye, Anne. There we go. See if it's going to work. Press the hide button. Oh, I can't. Yep, did it. So, yeah, thanks everyone for watching this very special edition of Toolbox Tech Talk. And the next one is next Sunday, which is Sunday the 13th of April at 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, because daylight saving finished last night. And it also means that we'll be post the Expo in Sydney. And I'll definitely have a lot to say about what I've seen at the Expo, people I've interviewed. And one thing I'm really excited about is some announcements around which cars will be eligible for V2G. In terms of eligibility, it's not a government thing. It's about the manufacturer of the cars allowing their car battery by bidirectional inverter chargers to be used as a battery to sync energy into the home or business or even to the grid. So V2G, there's some big announcements at the Smart Energy Expo. In fact, I think I'm the MC for that session. So there you go. Anyway, time to put the smoke machine on and slide out of here. Thanks everyone for watching.
Come on. You freaky dog. If I don't need to analyze every word that comes out is a lie. Make it look like it's so ice. You won't make it to the finish line. Now if you gotta know the truth was gonna let you go. It was fine, never mind, unpredictable. Fade out of the ground, you ain't no one.